Hi, I'm gonna hone a razor. This is a Tory Razor Company Wanamaker Special, Worcester, Massachusetts. It's got red celluloid scales that say Barber's Best on them. You can see it's got an etch on the blade that says Wanamaker Special. And on the scales there it says Barber's Best. I got Shafton Pro 1500 to set my bevel, clean up the edge. I'm just going to use water. I have a Toma 400. Make sure I'm flat. Build a little flurry. I got it in this little tray just to catch the water. Alright. So that first 100 strokes for me is kind of the key to determine whether I'm going to keep cleaning up the razor or not. Because I can look at it now and see if there's any major chips or cracks or flaws with how the knife is being honed. By examining it at this point and looking and see how clean the bevel looks and looking to see how well I'm making contact at the spine and making sure everything is straight and not warped, and I'm getting like nice crisp lines along the spine here and along the bevel edge. And this one is looking pretty good. There's some damage at the toe that I need to clean up a little bit, but the heel is rounded really nice to where I don't need to mess with that at all, which is good. That's a pain in the butt when the heel has a little protruding spike. And the rust and stuff that's on it, I'm not really going to worry about. I'm sending this on to somebody else, and they can polish it up if they want to. But I'll get it to where it's in working order. So Tory Razor Company was around from the 1850s until the 1960s. They were based in Worcester, Massachusetts. They started off as actually a strop company, and there's some really, they did like all different kinds of like combination strops that had like, a leather component and a cloth component and a stone component. They did like 4 component, multiple part strop and stone combination things. Anyways, if you find those, sometimes there's the Tory branded ones that have cauticles on them. And they're nice, like 8-inch long pieces of old rock cauticle that you can pick up on eBay for nothing sometimes. From the 1850s to like 1880, they imported razors from Germany and Sweden. And mainly they had razors, they sold razors to try to sell strops. And then around 1880, they decided they could make more money if they were manufacturing the razors themselves. So that's when they started manufacturing razors. And a lot of the early ones, like the ones that were pre-1880 that they're importing, and also a lot of the ones after 1880, were just like plain black horn or celluloid scales. Kitty. But then they started getting into fancy scales around the turn of the century, especially going into the late 19-teens and the 1920s and beyond. They had all different kinds of crazy celluloid scales. They were really at the forefront of using celluloid scales for razor manufacturers. And so they have ones like this one, the Rev one. You'll also see ones that are like look like a faux corn on the cob or a faux piece of bamboo or faux carved ivory. There's lots of different ones out there, and there's even I've seen old catalogs where you could they had all the different options listed and you could pick which one you wanted, get it customized. In the Torrey company, they usually had like several different ranges of razors, from ones that were very utilitarian and had very simple, old-fashioned kind of profiles, and up to ones that had a much higher level of fit and finish with the fancy scales. And this one is actually one of the fancier ones. You can see that it has a shoulderless design here, like I said, that makes it so the heel is very easy to maintain. And it's got what at the time was very sophisticated, clear red scales. So this would have been, a luxury item. I did try to figure out why it's called the Wanamaker Special, and I'm not sure. There was a Wanamaker department store, and the Wanamaker department store was also known for having a big pipe organ and a light holiday show every year, sort of like Macy's Day Parade kind of thing. And there was also a Wanamaker train company. There was also a Wanamaker who was a famous razor maker in Sheffield, England. There was, I believe, a United States senator named Wanamaker. So there's a lot of different things that could be. I'm not really sure. I'd have to do more research to figure out which particular Wanamaker this is referring to. But anyways, I would look for Tory razors on the internet because they're cheap and they're usually very high quality. And you just got to find ones that are in decent shape. And then if you're really into using them, they're great users. They're not like usually going to be your big flashy inch wide Sheffield choppers. They're more modeled after your utilitarian everyday German user sort of style of how they cut the razors and profile them, and similar to other ones that are available from the United States at that time, like Geneva, New England Razor Company, Diamond and Crown based out of Boston. There's a lot of companies at that time that are making similar razors that would have been competing for Torrey in the market for relatively high end, selling to barbers and selling to well-heeled customers at fine department stores, jewelry stores, that kind of thing. I don't know how many strokes that is. I haven't really been counting. But the basic idea is you keep doing that until you don't see damage on the bevel. This one still has just a little bit more toward the toe that I would really like to correct and address. So I'm going to be a little bit more forceful about it. And use my other finger to help guide the pressure to the area where the damage really is. I'm just putting a little bit of extra pressure on there because the stone is going to do best if there's a little bit of torque into it. And I can put some torque into it with just this hand, and I can try to roll it just a little bit as I come off the end of the stroke. Just lift it ever so slightly so that I'm putting a little bit more pressure on the part of the apex that is damaged. But you can see that it kind of curves up at that end. So it's kind of like a knife going to the tip of the knife where it has a sweep up. If you want to be able to get to the apex and clean the apex all the way up, all the way through to the point, then you have to lift up just a little bit and keeping it straight flat like I usually do. And I'm also just, since I'm on my coarsest stone, I'm also just going to give it a little bit of circles, just like this. Again, just targeting that area. I don't want to do too much on that area, and I want to make sure that whatever I do on one side, I do on both sides, so that I don't end up grinding one side more than the other. So I'm just mirroring whatever I do on one side, I do on the other. I don't worry nearly as much about this when I'm sharpening knives, because really knives are pretty asymmetrical. But unless you're dealing with a kamasori like Japanese style, then your straight razors are all 100% symmetrical. So whatever you do on one side, you want to do on both sides. And I don't want to create, I'm doing it all the way down the length of the bevel, but I'm mostly focusing on that toe. I just don't want to create like a ledge or a difference, a step between where I'm doing this work right now and where I was doing my other sharpening with the sweeping motion. So I'm making sure I hit everywhere, but I'm focusing on that toe where I know that there's still some damaged bevel, that rough spot when it's on my skin will have a tendency to scratch my skin. And that's also, I want to be able to use that toe to do detail work around my mustache. And so I need it to be nice and sharp and clean. And I'm mostly just trying to keep a little bit of downward force even between the spine and the edge. Mostly even, just a tiny hair bit of torquing it into the edge. And when I flip it, at the end of each stroke, I keep the spine down on the stone to minimize how much bouncing the edge does on the stone. You can hear that there's not much like click clack. It's very silent when I flip it. You just get that nice sound of the bevel sweeping along the stone, making nice even contact all the way along. And I'm doing a little bit of an X stroke, instead of just having it be straight back and forth. I'm coming at it a little bit more of an X pattern. And that will make sure that I'm getting all the way to the toe and all the way to the heel. It's just very subtle. You don't have to really exaggerate it to be able to do that. Just mostly, you're just keeping that spine and edge flat with the same amount of pressure on both sides. So you just ever so slightly putting a little X pattern into the stroke and a little bit of a roll, heel to toe. Otherwise, there'll be parts of that apex that you miss. And a lot of times people will be like, oh, the razor's warped, I can't get it sharp, or oh, the toe is messed up, I can't get to it. You just kind of gradually got to work your way into those troublesome areas till you get them all cleaned up. I'm happy with that now. This is not really a very good way to show you. It's not the right lighting or anything, but if you could see it, you'd be able to tell that the little rust spots that were down there at the end of the toe are gone now, and it's time to move on to the next stone. The next stone for me is this conical. It's going to be the stone that I used to do all my mid-range work on it. I got this other conical that I'm going to use as a like a Nagura, you know, to erase some slurry. And now the razor's really like 99% done. That Shapton Pro 1500 is really, really nice for razors. I don't know why it's better than the other Shaptons. Maybe it's just because the one I've used the most, so I got used to it. But I've tried the Shapton Pro 1000, the Shapton Glass 2000. I don't know, several other different brands of stones, and I keep coming back to that Shapton Pro 1500. I really like it. So I'm going to do the same thing I was doing. I'm going to do 100 strokes here. If I did my work on that other stone, then I don't really have to do much here. I just have to wait until it I can feel the blade. When I first do it, it feels kind of rough. And then as I go along more and more, it gets smoother and smoother and smoother until it feels like I'm just like, you know, sharpening on glass. But it's cutting. I don't know if you can see, but there's a lot of slurry. All that dark stuff is from the blade itself. That's metal. This thing cuts like crazy. So people talk about removing all the scratches from the previous stone. There's such a little contact area at the bevel of a razor, or a knife for that matter. I'm talking about the apex of a knife. There's so little material there that after a few strokes, you've already erased all the scratches of the previous stone. It's not like polishing when you're trying to reach a mirror polish or something. You're talking about such a smaller contact area when you're talking about the apex of the razor. So you've already, after just a few strokes, probably already erased all the scratches from the previous stone. You don't need to go that high, to go like a whole lot of strokes after you've got your bevel set. So I'm doing this just basically off of feel, and right now it's starting to get that feel where it's just like glass. Like there's no resistance whatsoever on the stone. And this would probably be good enough to shave off of too. I just wanted it to be that great of a shave. So now I'm going to move to a finisher. And this is my favorite finisher. This is a piece of jasper, and it is hard as hell. And I'm going to do it a little bit different. We're going to do it with, let's go with mineral oil. I'm going to do it with mineral oil. This thing is as hard as anything I've ever seen for sharpening, but it still somehow cuts and will improve the edge that comes off of whatever I put on it. It really is way harder. I've got a really nice chunk of surgical black Arkansas from Dan's, and it is way harder and denser than that even. So I don't know, but I really like the edge that it puts on stuff. And it doesn't take very long at all to do it either. All right. So now I'm gonna go strop it, and then I'll come back and we'll see how well it did.